So in the last few videos, we looked at the final version, the Declaration of Independence as it was approved of. But here we look like it seems like we have a very not final version of the Declaration.
What's really amazing is they go through 5 drafts at least of the Declaration, and it's wonderful to watch how each of the drafts changes. You have this committee of real people. You know, Jefferson and Adams and Franklin are all part of that committee. And Jefferson is using a lap desk, one of those little things he invented, so he could stand up or sit down and write this in a little room on Market Street. And then he shows it to Adams and he shows it to Franklin. Very deferential, he said, with your broadened view of the world, Dr. Franklin, perhaps you can make some suggestions.
I mean, Franklin and Adams could be his father.
Right. Jefferson's only 33. I mean, really, really young. And you have, Franklin and Adams. Franklin's in, hitting 70s then. And very much of a father figure. But you see real people working together in these rooms on Market Street in Philadelphia trying to craft this document.
Yeah. And you see it here. I mean, this looks like, someone editing a paper.
Which shows you how important it is to edit in a way. I mean, this is, those of us who are writers and editors, we like the fact that you should really sort of quibble over each word. You should these are words that matter. For example, you can see they put in a little phrase right here, separate and equal station. In other words, America is going to become a separate nation and an equal nation. But that word separate and equal actually goes down in American history with some resonance because it's used for a while to defend segregation. So even when they get the words almost perfect, they have a resonance that they have to be careful about.
And do you think they realized when they were writing it how important this document was going to be?
One of the amusing things is this was not considered the most important committee to be on in June and July of 1776. In fact, John Adams thinks he's already written the great document of American Revolution, which is a document written in May asking the various colonies to get rid of their royal governors because we are going to break away. So Adams is quite willing to let Jefferson write this draft because he thinks that this is not the most important of all the documents.
And on some level, to I guess, defend Adams a little bit, that does seem like a big deal. This was in May of 1776. He writes, once you're getting rid of your royal governors, you really are separating yourself.
And they've already had a vote to declare to be independent. So this is just a document. Let facts be submitted to a candid world. The opinions of mankind. They should declare the causes. This is really just their public relations document. But the reason it turns out to be so important is it's so beautifully written. It becomes the American creed. When they get together in these rooms and edit it, suddenly they say, all men are created equal. This becomes not just a propaganda document, but a mission statement for who we are as a people.
And to some degree, the power of poetry. I mean, they could have said these exact same things in very terse and...
This is why it was so good Jefferson wrote it. Because Franklin is a very good writer, but he's a very simple, plain writer. He writes Poor Richard's Almanac. A penny saved is a penny earned. He's one of the first Americans not to write in a very flowery way. John Adams's letters are very beautiful, but they're kind of pompous and orotund and self-important. You have a beautiful poet in Jefferson, but as we're looking at this document on the screen, even he benefits from some good edits.
And so this is literally Jefferson's handwriting we see here.
This is Jefferson's handwriting on the first draft. It's in the Library of Congress if you want to go see it. The final document is in the National Archives about 8 blocks away. And it's really wonderful to look at all of these documents, especially, what do you see here where they edit the great second paragraph?
So we hold these truths to be self-evident, and you mentioned earlier that before it was written, sacred and
undeniable. Yeah. So they're using the word sacred for the truths when Jefferson writes the first draft. And to me, if you look at the backslashes, the dark backslashes there, those are Benjamin Franklin's backslashes, I'm pretty sure, because he used a printer's pen and he was a publisher. And so he used that sort of backslashes to cross things out. And he writes the words self-evident. Now, one of the things is we historians never fully know. Carl Becker, who was a great historian of the Declaration, he's the one who said that that was probably Franklin's edits. For me, I've spent a lot of time in Ben Franklin's papers, which are at Yale University Library, and to me it really feels like his handwriting. And so we assume that it's Ben Franklin who takes out sacred because he doesn't want these truths to be based on religion. He wants these truths to be based on rationality and reason.
And so once again, it's not only the style of the crossing out. This is in line with Franklin's personality and beliefs.
Franklin was somebody who had read the great thinkers of the British and Scottish Enlightenment. That means John Locke, David Hume. David Hume was a person who came up with the concept of self-evident truths. I mean, a self-evident truth would be that all bachelors are unmarried, as opposed to a more contingent truth like Philadelphia is smaller than London.
Right. Kind of in math, an axiom.
An axiom, exactly. The fact that 2 plus 2 or 2 plus 3 is 5, that's not. That's not something that has to be further proved. Yes. And so these are self-evident. And that's what Hume does. And Franklin loves that. And Franklin loves Isaac Newton, too, because Franklin is a scientist. And so he believes that there are laws of nature, of nature's God, and that there's certain self-evident truths. So he doesn't want the word sacred in there, because that kind of seems like divine right of kings. God's the one who made these truths. And he's saying, no, as we discuss that whole paragraph, it's about rationality and reason getting us to those truths.
Right. But they also do talk about, as we talked about previously, there's a balance here because they do talk about created equal.
Well, let's look. Tell us, what do you see there that, this edit, that, and, it says that they had certain inherent and inalienable rights. And you see John Adams, and we're pretty sure that's John Adams' writing, not just because of his writing, but because of the concept. He was a little bit more religious than the others on the committee. And so he says they are endowed by their creator. He puts in that phrase, by their creator, with certain inalienable rights. So it's a balance. It's a balance between rationality and reason, which is self-evident, and divine providence, this notion that we're all children of the same creator and therefore we're all endowed with certain inalienable rights.
Yeah, this is really amazing. Just to realize that they were human beings.
They're real human beings who are probably arguing just like you. Jefferson gets really upset at some point, not at Franklin and Adams, but other people start editing it. And Franklin tells him this wonderful story about when he was a young tradesman in Philadelphia and somebody had a sign about selling hats and everybody tried to edit a sign for him. And Franklin said, that's why I've never been on a committee that's going to have a lot of people editing what I write. But, those of us who are editors, we kind of think those edits actually improve the document.
Yeah, it seemed like it turned out a pretty good result.
You don't get much better than we hold these truths to be self-evident.